The Greek word behind what God has joined together is a farming term. It means to fasten two animals under a single yoke. Matthew chapter 19, verse 6. The traditional reading of this verse at weddings is not wrong. It has anchored millions of marriages for centuries. But the Greek underneath it carries something the English could not preserve. And the word your Bible translates as cleave, as in shall cleave to his wife, comes from the Greek noun for glue, not a covenant, not a vow. Glue. Paul quotes this exact verse, the two shall become one flesh, and in the very next line writes something that changes what flesh means in this passage entirely. Three Greek words, a gluing term from ancient medical language, a yoking term from farming, and a word for flesh that Paul sets against spirit using the identical verb. By the end of this video, you will hear these 6 verses the way the Greek wrote them, and I will give you a practice built from the verb sequence in verse 5. 3 to 5 minutes, built from the passage itself. The scene opens with the Pharisees testing Jesus about divorce. They ask, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? They want a legal ruling. They are thinking in terms of contracts and permissions. But Jesus does not give them law. He goes to Genesis. He goes to the beginning. He bypasses the legal framework entirely and quotes 2 lines from the oldest text in the Torah. Here is the verse. For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. You have heard this read at a wedding. Everyone in this audience has. It is the cornerstone verse for every marriage sermon ever preached. But read it again without the ceremony in your ears and listen to the verbs. There are 3 verbs in sequence. Shall leave, shall cleave, shall become one flesh. That is not a declaration. That is a process. 3 stages, each one doing something the next one depends on. And then in verse 6, a 4th verb appears. God joined together. 4 verbs, 4 actions. In order. The English translated every one of these verbs with a word that hides what the Greek actually says. The first one, cleave, comes from a noun you would not expect to find anywhere near a wedding. Shall cleave to his wife. You have heard that line 100 times. The English word cleave sounds like devotion. It sounds like a choice a person makes on their wedding day. I choose you. I cleave to you. It carries the tone of a vow. The Greek word in the King James Version's underlying text is Proskollao. Strong's G4347. It is a compound of pros, meaning toward, and kollao, meaning to glue. The word literally means to glue toward, to glue onto. It does not mean devotion. It does not mean loyalty. It does not mean to choose. The root is kollao from the noun kolla. Kolla means glue. The lexicon definition from Thayer for kollao reads, to glue, glue to, glue together, cement, fasten together. Proskollao intensifies it with direction, to glue toward. This is a materials word. It describes what glue does to 2 surfaces when they are pressed together and set. The broader range includes any intimate bonding, cleaving, joining closely. But the root is the noun for glue. That is where the word starts. And there is more. The word kollao was frequently used in ancient medical language for the uniting of wounds. Not a vow, not a ceremony, the sealing of an open wound. Now look at where else this word appears in the New Testament. In Romans chapter 12, Paul writes, cleave to that which is good. Same word. Kollao. Be glued to what is good. In Acts chapter 17, certain men clave unto Paul and believed. They were cemented to him. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 17, Paul writes that he that is joined unto the Lord is one spirit. Joined, kollao, the identical gluing verb, applied to the Lord. This is not a word reserved for marriage. It is a word for irreversible bonding, and underneath the Greek sits the Hebrew. The word in Genesis chapter 2 that kollao translates is Dabaq, Strong's H692. The definition reads to cling, cleave, keep close. It appears 54 times in the Old Testament. And Dabaq is used far more often for clinging to God than for clinging to a spouse. Deuteronomy chapter 10 reads, to him shalt thou cleave. Psalm 63 reads, my soul clings to you. And Deuteronomy chapter 30 says holding fast to him is your life, Dabaq, the same word behind cleave to his wife, used by the psalmist for the soul's adhesion to the divine. You know the feeling of being cemented to something before you chose it, something inside you that locked in place, not because you decided, but because it was already sealed before you had a word for it. That is what kollao describes. And now that you have the word, the next time you feel that immovable bond to something true inside you, you will recognize it. Not because a pastor named it for you, because the text did. The word belongs to you now. Not because you generated it, because the text handed it to you, and no gatekeeper stands between you and what it means. This is correspondence, not medical claim. Map, not prescription. We are decoding a text, not prescribing a treatment. Kollao tells you how the joining happens. Glue, cement, irreversible bond, but it does not tell you who does the joining. Verse 6 does, and the word it uses comes from a place no one expects. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. This is the most quoted line from Matthew 19. It is spoken at nearly every Christian wedding ceremony on earth, and every time it is spoken, the word joined together sounds like a blessing. A minister sealing a marriage. God blessed this union. God joined these two people. The Greek word is Syzeugnymi, Strong's G4801. It does not mean to bless. It does not mean to unite in holy matrimony. Syzeugnymi is a compound word. Syn means together or identified with. Zeugnymi means to yoke. The related noun zeugos, derived from it, means a pair yoked together. Thayer's lexicon defines Syzeugnymi as to fasten to one yoke, yoked together. But the literal image beneath the word is two animals fastened under a single yoke and compelled to move as one, not side by choice, fastened, under a beam, compelled. This word appears only twice in the entire New Testament, both times in this exact scene, Matthew 19 and Mark 10, nowhere else. The New Testament reserved this word for this moment alone. And notice the grammar. God is the subject of the verb. The verb is in the active voice. God yoked. Not the couple yoked themselves, not the priest yoked them. God performed the yoking. Then Jesus says, let not man put asunder. The word for put asunder is chorizo. It means to separate, to divide. What God yoked can be pulled apart, but only by human interference. The yoking is divine. The separating is human. That distinction sits in the grammar of the verse itself. The traditional reading hears this as a command to preserve marriage. And that reading has real weight. It has carried real families through real hardship. But the Greek describes something prior to the ceremony. It describes a yoking that God performed, an act of fastening two things under one beam so that they are compelled to move in the same direction. You have felt the pull of two forces inside you, each wanting to go a different direction. One wanting to act, the other wanting to wait. One wanting to speak, the other wanting to hold still. Syzeugnymi suggests that the unification of those two forces is not your job to engineer. The verb says God does it. What changes when you hear this word is not your theology. It is your posture. You stop trying to yoke yourself. You stop pulling apart what was already fastened. That shift did not come from a denomination. It came from the word itself, and the word came from a source older than any institution. Now look at what happens next in the text. The disciples respond in verse 10 with something revealing. If the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. They are stunned. Their reaction sounds like men who just heard something that exceeded their framework for what marriage means. Something in what Jesus said went past the conversation about divorce and landed somewhere they did not expect. Kollao told you how. Syzeugnymi told you who. But neither word tells you what the two become. One flesh. Every reading of this verse assumes flesh means the body. Paul quotes this exact line and then writes a sentence that makes that assumption impossible. The two shall become one flesh. Sarx, Strong's G4561. Every viewer hearing this verse at a wedding assumes flesh means the physical body. Two people becoming one physical unit. A romantic union. But sarx in the Greek New Testament carries a range far wider than the body. Thayer's lexicon lists among the senses of sarx, the flesh denotes mere human nature, the earthly nature of man apart from divine influence, and therefore prone to sin and opposed to God. That is a standard lexicon definition, not commentary, not a secondary opinion, the established meaning. And Paul confirms it. In Galatians chapter 5, he lists the works of the flesh. The full list includes physical acts like adultery, fornication, murders, and drunkenness, but but it also includes hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings. Those are not physical. Sarx in Paul is not limited to the body. It includes the entire human condition, operating apart from spirit. Now watch what Paul does with this word. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 16. He writes that he which is joined to a harlot is one body, for two, saith he, shall be one flesh. He quotes the exact verse from Genesis chapter 2. The identical words, the two shall become one sarx. Then the very next line, verse 17. But he that is joined unto the Lord is one spirit. Same root verb. Kollao, the gluing word at the root of proskollao in Matthew chapter 19. Joined to a prostitute, one sarx. Joined to the Lord, one pneuma. One spirit. Paul set one flesh and one spirit side by side as a contrast. The same gluing verb, two different outcomes. One union produces sarx, the other produces pneuma. By placing them in parallel using the identical verb, he made it impossible to read one flesh as the final word on what union means. There is another kind of union the same verb can produce. And then in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 31 and 32, Paul quotes the Genesis passage one more time, word for word. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. Then he writes, this is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. The word for mystery is musterion. It referred to a hidden truth reserved for the initiated. Paul did not call this passage a teaching. He did not call it an instruction. He called it a great mystery and said it points beyond what it appears to describe. This is correspondence, not medical claim. Map, not prescription. We are decoding a text, not prescribing a treatment. You have carried the phrase one flesh as a description of your relationship with another person your whole life. Seeing that Paul places it in direct contrast with one spirit, using the same verb for both, changes what the word flesh means in this verse. It reads like a map of something happening inside you, not just between you and someone else. And once you see that contrast, sarx and pneuma side by side under the same verb, you cannot unhear it. The text handed you that. Not an institution, not a denomination. The text, 3 words, glue, yoke, flesh. Each one changed what you heard in the verse. But we have not yet read them together as a single sequence, the way Matthew wrote them. When you do, the verse stops being a verse about marriage. It becomes a map. Read verse 5 one more time with the Greek restored. A man shall leave father and mother. The Greek word is katalepse. It means to forsake, to abandon, to leave behind by ceasing to care for it. This is not moving out of your parents' house. In this reading, it maps to the decisive abandonment of inherited identity, the patterns, the conditioning, the reactions you received from your origin. Then he shall be glued to his wife, Proskollao. The intensified form of kollao, glued toward, cemented, bonded irreversibly. Two surfaces pressed together the way a wound is sealed, and the two shall become one flesh. Syzeugnymi. The preposition as means into. The two move into a state of being one sarx, one unified human nature. And that nature, Paul shows us, is not the only union the gluing verb can produce. He set sarx beside pneuma. One flesh is not the last word. There is another destination the same verb reaches. Then God yokes them, Syzeugnymi. The divine agent fastens the unified nature under a single yoke. Not the person. God, that is the sequence. Abandon, be cemented, become one. God yokes it. And there is one more detail the Hebrew holds. The word for one in Genesis chapter 2, one flesh, is echad. It is the same word used in the Shema, the most sacred declaration in Judaism. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, echad. The word that declares the unity of God is the same word used for the one in one flesh. The Shema and the marriage verse share the same word for one. That is not a coincidence you can explain away. It sits in the Hebrew and it has always been there. Now listen to the end of the chapter. After the disciples say, it is not good to marry, Jesus does not correct them. He responds with the teaching on eunuchs, 3 kinds. And then he closes that teaching with the phrase, he that is able to receive it, let him receive it. That phrase mirrors, he that hath ears to hear, let him hear. Its immediate referent is the eunuch discourse, not the marriage teaching directly. But the eunuch discourse only exists because of what Jesus said about one flesh. The disciples' stunned reaction opened the door to it. And the entire passage, from the Pharisees' question through the yoking, through the eunuch teaching, reads as one continuous exchange. The closing formula sits at the end of that whole sequence. What the Greek reveals is that the words beneath the English describe a process that operates at a level deeper than two people standing at an altar. In this reading, the verse maps an inner instruction, the abandonment of inherited conditioning, the irreversible cementing of what was divided, the emergence of one unified nature, and a yoking performed not by human will, but by something the text identifies as God. One thing remains, something you can do with what you just heard. Not tomorrow, tonight. The verse gave you three verbs: leave, cleave, become one. The Greek gave you what each one actually means: abandon, be cemented, be unified. The practice follows the same sequence. Sit somewhere quiet, close your eyes, 3 to 5 minutes. First, name one pattern you inherited, one reaction, one belief, one way of responding to the world that you received from your upbringing. You know which one it is. You have outgrown it, and you know you have outgrown it. This is katalipse, the leaving behind. You do not need to fight it, just name it. Second, place your attention on the part of you that recognized it was outgrown, the awareness that saw through it. Hold both, the old pattern and the awareness that outgrew it. Let them sit side by side. Do not force them together. Just let them be in the same room. This is the cementing, kollao, two surfaces pressed together, not by your effort, but by attention, not by your will, by what was sown in you before you had a name for it. Third, do nothing. Remain still. If the two begin to feel less like opposites and more like one continuous surface, that is the direction the verse points. The two shall become one, not by your force, not by your will. The text says, God does the yoking. Your job is to stop pulling apart what is being joined. Leave, cleave, become one. The verse was always a map. The Greek just taught you how to read it. You did not need a seminary degree to follow these three verbs. You did not need a denominational stamp to feel what kollao describes. You did not need ordination to recognize the yoking. The text gave you the words gave you the recognition, and the recognition is yours now. Paul called it a great mystery. He said it pointed beyond what it appeared to describe, and then he wrote one line that revealed the direction. He that is joined unto the Lord is one spirit. Same verb, different destination. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it.